there and welcome to the Secrets of Organ Playing podcast. I'm your host, Vidas Pinkevičius. Welcome to Secrets of Organ Playing podcast number 94. This is Sunday, May 14th, 2017. And today's guest is Frank Mento from Paris, France. And I'm so delighted to be able to talk to him about his newest work on harpsichord, especially how it relates to organists. Frank is an expert organist and harpsichordist as well. He teaches for many years harpsichord and keyboard and various early keyboard techniques, and he's just finished with publication of his 10th volume of the Harpsichord Method. This is completely innovative method, and Frank was already on our podcast a number of months ago when he was just starting his work. So I'm very delighted to be able to share with you those insights that Frank has prepared for you, and let's find out more about what he is doing with his harpsichord method. So let's welcome Frank into the show. Welcome, Frank. Thank you so much for joining us. And
you're welcome.
Very generous.
Thank you for asking me.
Yes, it's so fascinating to meet a fellow organist who is doing this generous work by sharing his own ideas and techniques into a publication, 10 volume publication for keyboard music lovers, for organists, for harpsichordists, basically for people who want to advance their early keyboard technique, right? And especially for harpsichord. So can you tell us, for starters, Frank, how this idea began in your head? Why did you start this project of developing harpsichord method?
I started this method because I started teaching harpsichord back in 1992, and there was very little material available for beginners. There were a few methods that were on the market, and some had good ideas, but they all started from the standpoint that the beginning pupil already had some basic musical knowledge and some basic keyboard technique. The first 2 or 3 pages were easy, but then afterward they jumped to difficult things. So I had to always add material, making photocopies, writing in my own exercises to fill these lacunas, these gaps. And so I ended up by writing my own method to make something coherent and more easily accessible to people who've never heard of the word of harpsichord. I started teaching back in an area which was what you'd call an underprivileged area. It's called what we call an education action zone, where these regions receive government subsidies to help young people have more access to culture. And so how to bring the harpsichord and early music to people who've never heard of such a thing. So I did a lot of research, consulting everything available, and I started to write something coherent, which would assume that the beginning pupil has no musical knowledge whatsoever. So we start from scratch. That was the beginning. That was back in 2000, about the year 2000. I started writing the method around 2001, and I started putting it on the computer with software, and then we launched it on the internet on 2013. So it's almost 4 years now that this method is on the internet. So that was the reason. That was the reason for all that.
Yes. So you started this idea because nobody else was doing this, right? And
that's correct.
You felt the need, and people were probably even turning to you for help, right?
Yes.
You wanted this material for teaching, right? And
yes.
You couldn't detailed, systematic approach to teaching harpsichord. anywhere, right? From grade 1 to grade 10, or level 1 to level 10, or
That's correct.
or
Yes.
even that probably.
Yes.
So you look at took initiative actually. You didn't write. I'm so delighted that you didn't do this mistake. I'm about to tell you. Um, when you feel a need of something and
Yes.
you have urge, let's say harpsichord method, and you don't find this thing anywhere else in the world, you tend to contact famous harpsichordists, right? And
Yes. Yes.
hey man, you should do this. You should. It's a wonderful opportunity to you. No systematic approach to harpsichord today on the market, and people are dying to know more about harpsichord. And this is new uprising in early music, especially in harpsichord today, in the recent decades. And all those people, famous harpsichordists, should do this, right? And you write those emails and messages to them.
Yes.
But
I already have contacted many all over the world.
you, Frank, you actually more than equipped to do this yourself, right? You
No.
have maybe you had this initial fear of might this work or not. You don't know, but you took the risk, right?
I really don't understand. I'm sorry. I don't
You
understand.
the risk of doing this yourself, which is
Yes.
so valuable. You didn't wait for anybody else to do this. You
No. No.
put your on the line.
Yes.
This
That's
is an
correct.
extremely generous and valuable work that you are doing. Thank you so
Well,
much.
well, you're welcome.
So, Frank, what did you discover from those years that you started creating this method, right, from the beginning and until now? Many years have passed. What did you learn from those years during your interaction with the students, perhaps with your students online? Can you tell us a little bit this story?
What I learned was that how to how to how to simplify something that is very difficult. I tried to put myself in the place of someone who has no musical culture and trying to explain what a plucked instrument is in comparison to what the culture that these people have. For example, people from the Middle East who have plucked string instruments. I try to make some type of an association, some type of an image. That was one thing. When you do research to prepare a method like this, you learn a lot of things. You find out what is not available and what is available. I have a lot of scores at home. I had to go to libraries. I checked on the internet. There are a lot of things on the internet now. There is a lot of good documentation now on the internet, which is serious. And I've learned quite a lot reading documentation by scholars, comparing what they said, and trying to make everything coherent. And I tried to collate, to assemble a number of pieces that would help the student progress in a calm way without jumping from something easy to very difficult. I try to get inspiration for what modern piano methods do. There are many excellent modern piano methods. I used this approach, but not trying to make it, to transform it into a disguised modern piano method, not at all. It's just that we're in the 21st century. We don't learn how to play an instrument the way people learned how 400 years ago. See, and so I had to, got inspiration from these excellent piano methods and applied it to the harpsichord.
Right.
That was what I learned.
This is extremely valuable. And as you're doing this work, Frank, you probably also run into many challenges, right? Can you share
Yes,
a
that's
few of them?
correct.
What
You
were
see, pardon me, that was cut off. Your voice was cut off there.
Yes, I mean to ask you, what were the challenges that you had to overcome in writing this method, besides simplifying what is very difficult?
There were so many questions that came to my mind. The more you explore something, the more you find you don't know. So you have to look everywhere to find answers, and contact people who seem to be specialists in that domain. So we learned a lot of things concerning touch, articulation, fingering, musical terms, which are not very common. So I had to make this accessible to people. And there's an old saying, if you want to learn, you have to teach. So the more you teach, you learn so much when you want to prepare something to teach. The more you explore something, the more you find out you don't know. It's a never-ending process.
It's absolutely true, Frank. If you
Yes.
want to learn something, we need to have three types of people in our lives. People
Yes.
of our level who can inspire and push us further, right? Because they are our peers at our level. Then we have to have mentors who are higher than us, more advanced. And also we have to have like students who are less advanced than us, because we transmit our knowledge, and by transmitting our knowledge, we systematize it and master it further to the level, right?
Yes,
So
that's correct.
valuable work here. Wonderful. So, Frank, I remember I first contacted you a few years ago when we were just starting with.
Yes.
Can you describe the progression in this method? How this method, 10-volume method, is structured so that people would have a good overview?
Well, the volume 1 starts from scratch. It assumes that the beginning pupil knows nothing. So we get to the basics of music. We learn the notes by playing, by starting with the middle of the keyboard, with middle C, and using contrary motion to learn the C major scale, using historical fingerings. Once this is learned, we go to the C position for both hands. We learn parallel and contrary motion. And we use pieces, the easiest pieces available for harpsichord, as soon as possible. The easiest I found are by Daniel Gottlob Türk. They are probably the easiest. They are pieces either for clavichord, fortepiano, or harpsichord. This was all interchangeable back then. And there are many excellent easy pieces. But even with those easy pieces, you have to have a basic knowledge of coordination. You have to know what an octave leap is. You have to have a certain amount of hand coordination. Otherwise, you cannot start this from the first lesson. It's impossible. So I had to make up pieces which are more or less dialogues between two hands to develop the coordination, a type of gymnastics, if you wish, okay, in a pleasant way. And though each volume corresponds to 1 year of study. So volume 1 is the first year of study. Volume 10 is the 10th year of study. So in between of that, you have a gradual progression from the easiest material to the most difficult material available, using technique, basso continuo, performance, practice, tips, and all of this. Stylistic information, a little bit of music history, a little very concise composers' biographies, explanation of certain musical terms in a very concise way, explanation of certain historical periods, for example, the North German school or French classicism, for example, or the early Italian Baroque. All of this explained in 1 or 2 pages, which could help the student to whet his appetite, to yearn to learn more.
Wonderful.
So there you are.
What's next? How do you progress to the next level?
Well, all 10 volumes are finished, so the 10th level is the highest level and the most difficult music available. I am preparing a supplementary volume, which is consecrated to material or repertoire for international harpsichord competitions. So this is the highest level of study, and it's also good for your musical culture. This will be a continuation of the 10 volumes, but the 10 volumes are sufficient. This is a supplementary volume for those who wish to prepare international competitions or even simplement to enlarge in the musical culture. And so I compared several international competitions, and I assembled the repertoire that was used for that, made it into a coherent and pleasant manner, and this way the pupil will have a glimpse of what is asked, what is demanded for international competitions. And of course, we use the sight reading exercises also, sight reading exercises, basso continuo, and all of that stuff. Technique also.
It's so valuable. When you first started, Frank, writing this method, did you think that you will write only 10 volumes or supplementary as well?
I wanted 10 volumes because I think 10 years with an instrument, you've covered a lot of things. Okay. And I would like to have supplements, but I don't want to say that 10 volumes is not enough. No, you have plenty of things there. There are always a lot of other possibilities. This 11th volume, which will not be called volume 11, it will be called Repertoire for International Competitions.
Right.
Because the repertoire is used or has been used in international competitions. The technique will correspond to that level of study also. The basso continuo will be a continuation of what has already been covered in volumes, in the 10 volumes. However, once this 11th volume will be completed, which I hope will be completed because I just started on it, it will be very long, because each volume represents hours and hours and hours of work, without talking about proofreading. And even when you proofread, there are so many errors that creep in there. And so I do all of this, takes hours and hours and hours. Once this new volume will be completed, I would like to have a volume devoted exclusively to basso continuo, because the basso continuo that has been presented in these 10 volumes, plus the supplementary 11th volume, does not include a complete course of study. You can't, because the repertoire has been favorized and the technique. The basso continuo exercises concern 1 or 2 pages. So that you can have, it's like what a student should have in a lesson. You should have repertoire, technique, sight reading, basso continuo, and some improvisation. So you can't have an in-depth basso continuo course on 1 page. You have to, I would like to devote a whole volume, which will be an enormous volume, I guess. It will take all of the material already presented, plus newer material and more difficult material, which will be a continuation of what has already been discussed, starting from the easiest to the most difficult level of basso continuo. This is a future project.
Wonderful. I'm sure it will take quite some time to assemble this future.
Yes, it will. It will.
It looks like a very comprehensive approach, right? You not only providing systematic 10 levels of 10 years of study, harpsichord techniques and repertoire, but you also providing the supplement, right? For people who want to go to the concert level and international competition level.
Yes.
Supplement. And besides that, you on top of that working on continuum practice.
Yes.
Which would empower harpsichordists and keyboardists to really become a well-rounded musician, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Music ensemble, so to say, right?
That's correct. As some say, basso continuo should be taught at every level of study, and I agree with that. If it's at all possible, yes, I agree with that. Harpsichordists, organists should be able to do that. Lutenists, because everyone back then knew how to do that. And even people were judged by how they improvised, you see, not just by playing what was on the written page. They were judged by how they were able to be creative. See, there are documents of the period that talk about this.
With continuo, in those days, they only had to write the basic bottom line, the base part.
Yes.
Numbers, digits with.
Yes.
But then a lot of people today only play and scores those intervals, right? Those numbers and the bass. which is actually kind of boring. It wasn't not at all how it was played back in 18th
No,
century.
you have to be musical. It's important. You see, Francois Couperin says that the continual player should spend just as amount of time preparing a continual accompaniment, just as much time as he would prepare a written piece for harpsichord. He says that, and of course, this is logical. You should be able to sight read a basso continuo line, but it takes preparation. It takes a lot of reflection. You have to calculate what is what is the soloist doing, what is the chamber music ensemble doing. You have to. It's you never play the same thing twice, the same way twice. It's an outline. A basso continuo is a schema. It's an outline. It gives you the chords. But that's not only that. That's just a starting point. You have to add passing tones, ornaments, perhaps to imitate what the soloist is doing. If it doesn't distract from the performance, it's an art. The art of accompanying from a thorough bass, from a figured bass. And this all started the basso continuo started in Italy by organists. It was like a cheat sheet, where they thought they were going to make a mistake, or they wrote in figures, so they'd know what chords to play. That was the starting of basso continuo in the early Baroque, late Renaissance, early Baroque. That was the beginning of basso continuo.
And then it developed in a new system, more comprehensive system, where you could even accompany very chromatic recitatives from cantatas, let's say.
Yes. You have to take everything in context. You see, it all depends on the composer. Some were precise, some are not precise. And there are differences between the composers and between the national schools. So you have to take all of that into consideration. And you say, you have to look at the solo line, you have to look at the bass line. And if there is an ensemble, look at what the other instrumentalists are doing. There are often similarities between the basso continuo figuring and what the chamber music ensemble or orchestra is doing. There is this, most often doubling things, but you have to think of what can you do to help the ensemble rhythmically and to add a little spice to it. That's the basso continuo gives a lot of energy to an ensemble. It's like a continuous electric current. Basso continuo, that means it's continuous. This procedure starts from the beginning to the end of a piece. Basso continuo, thorough bass, from what it goes throughout the piece. Mm-hmm. It's like an underlying electric current.
I have a question regarding continuo as it relates to your method. Do you, in volume 10, which you just recently published, do you also include continuo exercises at that level?
Oh yes, of course, and extracts from pieces that are, and even pieces. So it's just not theory. It's not just dumb exercises. They are practical exercises used in the context in relation to the pieces that are given. See, if we're treating the seventh chord, giving pieces that treat the seventh chord in the figuration.
So it's well-rounded approach, right?
Yes.
Not only for thinking about the separate method on continuo playing, but you are also incorporating those continuo exercises and techniques into harpsichord method at any level, 10, 9, 7,
yes.
5. All those previous levels have continuo.
That same material will be used, except it will be all in one place. And in addition to all, it would add other material, which would be much more difficult. So it would be a complete, at least for 18th century basso continuo, because if you go into the early Baroque, it's somewhat different. So what I'm treating basically is 18th century basso continuo, which is more accessible.
Right. It's more common practice related, right?
Yes, because you have to have another volume concerned to the earlier basso continuo, which was used at the time of Monteverdi and these people.
Yeah.
It's a slightly different approach.
Yeah. Interesting. And do you teach people how to embellish those intervals and how to mix
Yes,
them?
by using diminutions, which were the ancestors of the Baroque ornamentation.
So it's really, I think, a well-rounded approach because people will not only learn how to, read those chords
Yes,
in the right hand, but
they learned to be musical by keeping the common tones, using contrary motion. Hey.
and when you, for example, encounter a accompaniment music, when you have to play with other instruments, a
Yes,
performance, you can really think about thematic development and to play
yes.
duets with the soloist, right?
Let's see, I think your voice was cut off a little bit. I didn't quite understand your question.
I just meant that whenever you play with a soloist, right?
Yes,
You have the solo line, and you
yes,
add maybe the right hand part, 3 lines. So it becomes like Johann Sebastian Bach would do. Whenever he wrote, we had duets. He improvised a trio. Whenever he had trio texture, he would add a quartet, right,
yes.
on the harpsichord.
This demands a lot of practice, of course, a lot of experience. It's always good to incorporate what the soloist does whenever it's possible. This is possible sometimes when you compare what's being done by the soloist and when you compare with Bach. Bach has written certain realizations, and you always get inspiration from what the composers did when they wrote everything down. So a continuist, when they're smaller ensemble, if you're just accompanying a soloist or you're playing in a small ensemble, you have more freedom. But when you're playing with a larger orchestra, you have a more percussive role, where you reinforce the cadence, you reinforce the rhythms, things like you reinforce what the strings are doing and what the percussion is doing.
Your idea, Frank, relates to the very interesting compositional technique in the Baroque times when composers thought in a way, the more voices do you have in a composition, the
Yes.
less they are independent, right?
Yes.
They are rhythmical and form chords. And the thinner texture that you have, 2, 3 voices, then each part is so independent and virtuoso, and has beautiful flourishes because you have to fill in the missing chords a lot.
Yes, that's correct. It's a good opportunity to use your imagination. You just don't play chords. You have to do something with it. Alfred Hitchcock once said, music making doesn't mean filming people talking. See, that's what Alfred Hitchcock did. Well, playing continuo doesn't mean playing chords, just playing chords. You've got to do something with it.
Yeah, and
you have to be tuneful. You have to be tuneful.
Yes. In previous days, Mattheson, remember Mattheson, Johann Mattheson, who wrote Grosse Generalbachschule and Kleine Generalbachschule, right? Those 2 methods of playing continuo in Germany. The Grosse Generalbachschule treated very improvisatory approach, right, to general bass and or continuo.
Yes.
But the Schule is like more of a preparation with chords, right? It's like a rudimentary.
That's correct. Well, I've taken my exercises from various historical methods, and I try to make everything as progressive as possible.
Wonderful, Frank. It's, another thing that interests me is your contacts with real life situations, with real students.
Yes.
For example, I know you are providing your methods online. Yes, people can go to your
Yes,
website.
yes.
Methods and volumes are available there. So, do you have any feedback from your
A
own
lot.
class?
We get a lot. We get a lot. We're getting nice comments from all over the world. People saying that they'd never seen anything like this, and that ever since they've been using this method, they've been progressing, because everything is well organized and structured. See, it helps the student progress. One colleague told me from Italy that she's never seen anything like this. And I'm so very happy, because this is the goal, is to make this instrument more accessible and material more readily accessible, especially in places where sometimes printed scores are difficult to obtain, especially the most expensive ones.
Have you thought, Frank, about expanding your methods into courses, actually into like video courses or something that a person could have more than printed out music in the on the sheet, right?
I would like to do that. I've been thinking about it, but I haven't really organized anything like that for the moment anyway. Not right now. I'd like to in the future, perhaps, but
Yes.
it take a lot of a problem of logistics. It's a problem of organizing all of that. But I would like to do that.
I
It is
think
a
it would
good idea.
be extremely valuable, right? Because
Yes.
providing method books, right? People
Yeah.
like self-study courses. People get this resource, right? And
Yes.
they're on what to do with that, and they don't perhaps know if they're playing correctly or
Yes.
incorrectly.
I understand. I understand.
Your coaching, maybe coaching,
Yes.
a
Yes.
beautiful way to facilitate advancement of the student by providing feedback and your own ideas in other forms, in other mediums than
Yes.
text.
That is a good idea. I will consider that in the future, but it's a question of organization. No.
So, Frank, of course, by this point, our listeners are curious about finding more about your work and yourself. So, can you give our listeners a link to your website, perhaps so they could click and visit your work online?
They could contact me by the website, of course. There is a message box there where I can be contacted. There is no problem with that. I'd be happy to answer questions.
What's the address?
The address, it's the where the method is presented. It's in small letters, harpsichord method.com.
Very simple.
Harpsichord, and all in small letters, harpsichord-method.com. And as soon as you click on that, you come right onto the site with a presentation of the material, a picture of me, a short biography, and a presentation of each volume. And there at the bottom, if you scroll down, there are comments. You can leave comments. There's a message box there. I can be contacted that way.
Excellent. So I'm sure I will include this link into the description of our conversation.
Well,
so
thank you.
Click and visit your site online and find out more about the beautiful work you're producing these days. Very generous work. Not too many people are doing about in musical form, in
Okay,
keyboard.
yes.
So what you're doing is very, very valuable. Thank you so much, Frank.
But you're welcome.
What would be number one thing you wish you knew when you first started teaching harpsichord?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. So, Frank, what would be number one thing you wish you knew when you first started teaching harpsichord?
The number one thing I wished to do when I started teaching harpsichord. Is that what you meant?
one thing you wish you knew.
What did I wish I knew?
Yes.
When I first started teaching harpsichord, I wished I would have known more back then, because I came to the harpsichord very late in life. I started with the modern piano when I was 8 years old. I started the organ seriously when I was 16 years old, and the harpsichord when I was 26 years old. So, but there were a lot of similarities between the organ and the harpsichord, of course. And the harpsichord opened up my eyes for early music concerning touch and the approach and everything, because all of those early composers, or at least most of them, were harpsichordists and organists at the same time. So teaching harpsichord, when I first started teaching harpsichord, I wasn't even thinking of teaching harpsichord. I started out as a piano accompanist to a voice class in a conservatory. The dean of the conservatory called me into his office, and I was wondering, but why does he want me? Or what did I do wrong? I said, no, relax. He asked me questions. He says, do you know how to tune a harpsichord? I says, I know how to tune a spinet harpsichord. I says, I can repair a broken quill. He asked me, can you teach harpsichord? I said, yes, because he saw on my CV that I had studied harpsichord with Eugen Clapers. He read my resume. He asked me, would you like to teach harpsichord here? Because the former harpsichord teacher had gone. I says, okay, all right. So that was back in 1992. And so that's how I started. And so ever since that time, I started getting documentation and doing everything to make up for the lost time. And I learned so much while teaching, because I've learned there's so much material available, especially for early music, a lot of basso continuo material. But to make it accessible to the general public, that's another story. That was my role, how to make the harpsichord available to the general public. Mm-hmm. And so that was my first thought when I started teaching harpsichord. I wished I'd have known much more when I started teaching. So I had to make up for all the lost time, which goes to show you that when you start teaching, you find out how much you learn.
Yes, how much to learn there is. It's very broad subject. It's like an entire instrument, right? The harpsichord.
Yes.
There were piano methods. There were organ methods, right?
Yes, of course.
Harpsichord method available. So
there were some, but back then people started with another keyboard instrument first. You see, but I says no. These are children. We're going to start them directly with the harpsichord. If possible, it's good to start with the clavichord, but not many places have a clavichord. It all depends on what country you live in. All depends on the conservatory. I have some colleagues who teach clavichord, but there are not many. Or even early piano, forte piano, but it's good to start out with the clavichord first because of its sensitivity. But in most cases, we can't do it because it's an ideal situation. So we should start directly with the harpsichord.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Frank, for today.
You're welcome, Vidas.
I hope you will continue to create your supplement and your continuo method on top of that. And let me know when it's ready.
I certainly will. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Students will visit your site at harpsichord-method.com.
That's right. I'd just like to say that this method is being used in 27 countries. Since we launched the method in 2013, and up to now, this method is being used in 27 countries, covering Europe, North America, South America, and Oceania.
Wow. So
I'm very, very happy. I'm very happy.
I hope you will get students from Africa as well.
Oh, I would love to. I'd love to.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You very much. Have a good day. Bye.
If you liked this conversation, I encourage you to visit my blog, Secrets of Organ Playing, at organduo.lt, where you will find lots of insights, practical advice, and training for every area of organ playing. You can subscribe to this blog for free to get your daily dose of inspiration and to be the first to know when any of my future podcasts roll out. I hope to help you reach your dreams in organ playing. I'm Vidas Pinkevičius. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you online really soon.